Hello, everyone. I am Gandair of the gaming clan, VATOCLAN, and with me is Hiei, who played in MLG's Starcraft 2 open bracket. Hiei, you come all the way out here from Mesa, is that right?
Yep. I drove out from Mesa, Arizona, and with a friend. I didn't do it alone, so it was a good drive.
Now, I remember seeing you in local lands in Arizona history back in 2011. Whatever happened to those? I remember there were a lot of them going on. I used to go to them regularly until I started casting League on Saturdays as a hobby. And I haven't heard anything since on that front. Do you know whatever happened to those? Was there like anything that went on, or did we just not have a person for it, or the competitive scene went down? Is there anything that you know about that?
Yeah, I'll actually take the mic because it's kind of a long story. Originally, it was with Hotkey where Skew and Suit Guy would do them, and they kind of lost a little bit of momentum doing them because they kept picking kind of mediocre venues. Either there was no AC, or it was at kind of a local chain who had a lot of restrictions, so that kind of died out. And then it was picked up by a guy named Kevin Kumar, who, awesome guy, ended up having to move out to Maryland, I think, somewhere back east, to take a job. And when he moved out, it kind of fell off as far as doing lands, but we've still been doing some online stuff. But the biggest problem is that we don't really have anybody to kind of take over for it as far as organizational wise. But there's still, we still talk, we still play a lot with each other. So there's still a community there, just not as many lands.
It was really unexpected to see you here because every time I come to one of these, I looked at the player list before I come out. I try and see who I want to interview, which players I have a particular interest in at a time, who has something topical I can get media on. And I actually didn't I saw the name Maui Mallard on the list, but you don't play as that anymore. You've been playing under the ID Hiei. When did the name change happen?
It took place probably somewhere around 2010. I actually changed it when I joined Team Alt, who had some really good players. I changed it from Maui Mallard to Sriracha, and then once I left Alt, I changed it from Sriracha to Hiei because I was watching Yu Yu Hakusho at the time, and that's one of my favorite shows. And Hiei was just such a cool character, so I changed it to Hiei.
When you have one of the things I've always wondered about with name changes, because there were a lot of name changes in GSL early on. There were a lot of characters but there were a lot of players that changed their ID in it. And Artosis and Tasteless always said something to the effect of like, why do people do that? So I'm going to pose the same question to you. Sometimes it's difficult for a viewer to follow a player in particular if they have an ID change because it changes on the replays and things. But here at MLG, they retain the same MLG ID that you originally used. So why switch from an ID that has an existing association to something different?
Well, for players that are more well-known, players like Losira or Trickster, who originally changed his name from Songho to Trickster, and then now he's like Swagger, I think, something silly. Players like that who actually do have followings, I actually think it negatively affects them because it's like, oh, Losira, and now people are, oh, well, Losira is, Kongho, so it kind of messes with people's minds, and then they might actually lose a little bit of their following. For a player like me, when I did all my name changes, it was in that area, but when I was like high diamond, so I didn't really have a following to lose when I changed my alias. So for me, it didn't have as big of an impact for well-known players like Losira or Songho.
And I have to ask about that middle one.
Sriracha?
Why did you go with that? I can't help but ask that question.
Well, one of my friends, he loves Sriracha, and he puts it on everything. And one of the jokes that we have is that I don't like two things. I don't like spicy stuff, and I don't like scary stuff. And Sriracha is, spicy. And I asked him, what should I change my name to? He says, Sriracha. I said, why? He says, because everybody loves Sriracha. So I changed my name to Sriracha.
I always love it when things are that simple and don't have some like crazy, weird off reference to an episode of Arrested Development or something like that. You play Terran. I've watched a couple of your games here. And how do you feel about Terran in Heart of the Swarm compared to Terran in Wings and in a competitive setting?
It's definitely a lot better. The biggest problem for Terran was that against Zerg, they would just get to a point, and it was like, well, I can never kill that army. So you would see players like Polt or select, just like pick up and just drop everywhere and just try and kill everything without actually fighting the army. But fighting the army was actually unwinnable because Broodlord Infestor was the most cost-efficient unit composition in the game. For Heart of the Swarm, it's obviously much better because the Infestors has gotten all their changes. With the Widow Mines and Hellbats and the Speed Medevacs, it's so much more easy to do damage to Zerg early on to keep them from getting to that endgame composition. And then just now that they can't go Broodlord Infestor anymore, players are going Ultras because it's much more mobile, and it's just easier to deal with. You still can play that pick up and drop everywhere kind of style, but you ultimately can kill that army. Also, one thing that's not mentioned very much is the Raven changes. The changes to Hunter Seeker Missile are so good. I love Hunter Seeker Missile.
On that subject of you liking the Hunter Seeker Missile, I was going to ask, what for this this current patch, this current expansion, what are you liking and what are you disliking about the race that you play at the moment?
I'm definitely liking just the feeling that I can actually do stuff to Zerg now, whereas if they kind of got to Infestors, it was kind of like, well, every timing is now shot because Infestors just crush bio with Ling and Baneling support. Something I'm not liking, kind of it feels like with Mothership Core and the Nexus Overcharge, it's very easy for Protoss to just play super duper duper greedy, and it's kind of hard for Terran to kill Protoss. I almost said Zerg, just because Nexus Overcharge kind of puts a timing on all your drops. Also Hellbats, I'll get out of the way. Hellbats need a nerf, and they're gonna get it. I don't necessarily agree with the just straight up damage nerf. I think they should just remove the biological tag from them, because then it still gives the Hellbat drops, fangs. It still makes them dangerous, but they don't have that sustain where, Hellbats can just heal through everything you do to them. So they still can do damage, but they just can't stick around forever.
Also, on the subject of, Heart of the Swarm changes, there were a lot of new maps that were released, and I like a terrible map called Blistering Sands. For some reason, that is my absolute favorite map in the game, and I was sad but understanding when they took it out. What's a map you wish that they would bring back, or just a map that you really, really liked to play on from the, let's say, the first, up to patch 1.3? Mm-hmm. And what are you liking on the, current new release of maps?
I'll start with the new maps that I like. I like that new map Frost that they've had in the open bracket. I always, I played a couple games on it, and I really liked how it kind of played out. There's no really clear expansion path, and the expansion paths are kind of weird when you do take them, and the expansions just look weird when you take them. So it makes your opponent feel very vulnerable to attack, and attacking is always good. A map that I would like to see come back, that's a hard one. Maybe Jungle Basin. Do you remember that one? It had the plateau in the middle. They said that they were going to do something with the gold bases and add more expansions to it, because that was always the problem, was that, well, I can never take a third base on this map. So they kind of got, they took it out saying that they were going to put it back in, but with changes, but they never really did that. So I was always kind of interested to see how they would change it.
Overall, comparing the older maps like that to the newer release of maps, do you think that map construction, map balance is heading in the right direction?
I think so. For a while, the biggest problem was that the maps were just not big enough. Zergs couldn't expand everywhere. 1111 was just so strong with the bunker being built at 35 seconds or however long it was. And then they nerfed the bunker, they nerfed the barracks build time, and then they just made the maps bigger. So that was good, but now it's kind of getting a little bit out of control, where maps are just so big. We still see maps like Belshir and Neoplanet S that are still relatively small and relatively compact. So I think it's getting in a good spot. I do like the kind of Kespa trend of making maps with no towers. It feels like it allows for a much higher skill cap than where it's oh, well, there's his army. That's cool. Whereas now, without towers, you actually have to hide stuff around the map, and it just creates for a much more interesting dynamic, I think.
Is there anything that you would like to see in maps currently that is not implemented? Is there some mechanic or some sort of terrain feature or anything like that you think is largely missing?
I've never really thought about that. I don't know how I feel about this, but I always thought that on that map Icarus, do you know that map where it has the 2 gold patches in the back? I always thought that was a really cool idea, but the contrast of that is that, you have people that make builds specifically designed for that map. It's like, oh, well, I can utilize the 2 gold patches and, have this really sick timing because I have this much more mineral income. So I don't really know about that. More high ground. I'm Terran, so I love high ground.
Well, hey, that's the best place to be when you're playing, especially when you're running mech, Terran. The question I want to close out with is, you played in a lot of local lands. I've seen you compete there, and I was really happy to see you at MLG because I'm like, whoa, yes, someone else representing Arizona actually out here playing on the in the bigger tournament. As a player playing in local lands versus the more professionally run MLG, like, what are some of the differences? Any likes, dislikes? I'm just kind of looking to get a comparison between the two and how it affects you play style.
Yeah. I like competing in any environment, whether it's MLG or at a local LAN or on an online cup or just whatever. I'm very competitive. The biggest difference that I've noticed, though, is that at a local LAN, I can pick out the people that I want to avoid. I can say, oh, well, I want to avoid Strikers, who plays for Complexity Academy, or I want to avoid Cold Flame, who used to play for XO, and he's now on my team. So, it's very easy to pick out the people that I want to avoid, and there's maybe 3 or 4 of those people. But at MLG, you can't do that because you want to avoid everybody. There's maybe 2 or 3 players that it's like, oh, man, if I could play him in the first round, I get an easy win in the first round. But everybody is so good here. I mean, I played Sase in the first round, and then I played like a 1600 Masters in the second round. So it's just like, oh, everybody's really good. But at least for me, that kind of gives me a little bit of perspective about how much further I still have to go as a player until I'm actually at that level where I feel like I'd be confident in competing with, everybody that's here.
Was it easy to adapt from the sort of kind of free-form thing with the local lands versus the more rigid structure for, timings for when you have to show up, other things like that, just like the logistics end?
For me, yeah. Just because I'm very schedule oriented. I like saying, okay, at this time I'm gonna do this, and then with MLG, I can do that. With the local lands, it's obviously because it's a much more relaxed environment. But here, where people are actually really trying to compete and playing for a serious amount of money, it's obvious that, or it's expected that people are much more serious about times and their structure.
And who are you playing for right now? Because I missed that earlier on when we were talking.
Right now I'm playing for O Gaming, and I'm not on their A team. I'm on their academy, and I captain their academy.
That is awesome. How long have you been? When did you get involved with them?
I got involved with them early January of this year. So yeah, I haven't been their captain. I started as their captain in February, but early January, I believe.
Excellent. And having that team involvement and that position of being captain, has that had, well, it's had a positive impact on your play, I'm sure. But what I want to know is there any particular thing that you can say, hey, in this position that I'm in now, I see this differently, and it helped me in such a way?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, having the responsibilities of a captain, it kind of takes away a little bit from my ability to play, just because I have to worry about managing everybody a little bit. And recently, I've kind of taken a step back from that and had one of our managers come in and help a little bit more. But yeah, absolutely, having a group of 12 to 14 guys that I can go to and say, hey, I need help with this. Who can help me? And then, having 3 or 4 different players be willing to help me with that, it's obviously, it makes for a very good training environment.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear that things are going so well for you. I was really excited to see you out here competing. Will you be going to more of these in the future? Finances and travel and all that permitting.
Probably not in the near future. The first big event I went to was IPL, and I said, well, I don't want to go to another live event until I can compete. And so now I've competed, and I've kind of tested the water, and now I want to be able to say, okay, I don't want to come to another live event until I feel like I can compete and actually make a run. So, I have a feeling like I know what I need to do to do that. So now it's just going back, working on my play, getting better, and then eventually coming back and doing it.
Excellent. Well, Hiei, I'm really glad to see you out here. It's so cool to see anyone from the local scene, especially having improved, so much and just being on the up and up. Is there anyone you want to shout out, say hi to, anything like that?
Thank you to O Gaming and all of our sponsors. Thanks to Ruff for being just a good teammate. He made a little bit of a deeper run in the open bracket than I did, but we talked for quite a bit. Everybody at O Gaming, everybody on their academy. Thanks to my parents for, helping me through all this and being supportive of me every step of the way. And thanks to you for giving me this interview. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Hiei. It was great talking to you.
Yep, you too.